that's just how life is. So you just have to recognize that it is messy and it is a balancing act, and we just do the best that we can every minute, but you're not going to be perfect.
All right, you're listening to Being Built. I'm Aaron Davis, the host of the podcast, and I'm the founder of Reliant Search Group. I'm here with Andrea Kunk, the president of Peerless Technologies. Thank you so much for coming. And
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And I invited you to be on the podcast after I saw you speak at a Chamber of Commerce event. I thought you did a really good job of kind of summing up the state of your organization and speaking to the defense industry in general.
Thank you.
Yeah, you did great. And I'm like, wow, she's on the speaking circuit. I gotta get her in the chair while she's hot. How are you? How was your week? You said it was a busy one, huh?
Pretty good. Yeah, it was a busy week. I think most weeks are busy weeks, but as they always say, it's better than the alternative.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I always try to be grateful when I'm overwhelmed.
Right, exactly.
Although I don't want to live a stressed life.
No, I think it's finding that balance of being busy, contributing, feeling like you're making a difference, but not running around like you're getting chased by a tiger all the time.
What would you say on a scale of 1 to 10 is your average stress level in a given week?
I tend to be kind of a very type A person.
Okay.
So I feel like I get stressed about things. I think I do a pretty good job of portraying calmness in the midst of stress.
You don't create stress, you carry it, is what you're saying, right?
Exactly. And I think I take on a lot of stress on myself, whether it's personal, with the job, with just, wanting to make sure that I'm doing a good job all the time as a leader, as an employee, as a mom, as a wife. So I feel like I live in a pretty high stress state, and that's something that I try to work on as well, because I think one of my favorite quotes that I try to come back to is Mark Twain said that worry is interest paid on a debt not owed.
Oh, interesting.
So I try to tell myself that of, what, is worrying really going to help this? So stress management is an ongoing theme for me in my life and role.
Yeah, it's an interesting reference to worry, because I actually find a lot of value in processing things and thinking about things. And I tend to, I don't know if obsess is the right word, but I will bake things for a while. I'll use the word bake. Things that I'm like, I'm not feeling confident about it. And a leader I used to work with, Ravi Manchala, founder of Smart Data here in town. Ravi used to say, like, if I'm not sure about something, I just let it be for a while. And he was waiting for a moment of clarity, essentially, for a moment of confidence about something. You can't always enjoy that benefit. You can't always wait. Sometimes a decision demands to be made. But I found value in that, because sometimes over time, you're like, oh, there's the variable I was missing, right? So the difference between that and then like worrying about something, what is the difference between just like allowing yourself to think about something for a long time, just bang around in your head for, at length until you finally come up with something, and worrying? And I think maybe it's just your emotional state.
I think a little bit. I think too that I agree with what you're saying of kind of letting things percolate and just sort of work around in your mind is something that I think is healthy, and a lot of times helps you come up with a different way of thinking about things or different ideas that maybe you didn't have the first 10 minutes you were thinking about it. But I think that, like you said, it's that not going overboard of getting so caught up in the potential negative side. And one of the things that I tried to do is just cut to the chase right away and say, okay, this situation that I'm thinking about, percolating, potentially worrying about, what's the absolute worst case that could happen, like the absolute worst case. And it could be really bad. But I think at least recognizing that and just putting that on the table and saying, you know what, that could happen. It's probably not likely, but it could happen. So now let's focus on things that I can do to make that worst case scenario not happen, to make the actual outcome better than what that worst case scenario is. And then those are the things I think that then I start churning in my mind of what are the alternatives, or how can we do things differently, or what resource or support or different person can I, engage to try to do something to prevent that hopefully unlikely, very worst case scenario from happening.
That's a good framework for deciding on dinner.
Yeah.
Like, how bad could it be
if
we went to El Toro?
Like,
right? Yeah. Like, how bad could the experience be? Right?
What can we do to make this better?
That's a great example, though. Like the dinner decision. What do we get to eat? Of how much decision energy we put into things of so little difference. Like, do we go to this brewery or do we go to that cafe? And like the difference in your experience is so trivial. But then, yeah, I don't know. What is it about the mundane nature of that decision that just we give so much attention to little things like that?
Right.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. So you run a $100 million company. It's 500 people now. I mean, that's a lot going on. A lot of customers, a lot of big contracts, that kind of thing. So it's a lot of spinning plates. It's not if there's a fire, it's where and when, and
right.
whether it's yours or, your colleagues. So how do you decide whether you hold on? How do you decide how much energy to give a given decision? Like, what are the variables that matter most to you?
That's a really good question. And I think it's about finding the right balance and assessing each situation uniquely, because I tend to be, again, I'm a very type A problem solver. Let's, take care of this and move on type of person. But sometimes that's not necessarily the right paradigm to have, because you can make decisions too quickly, or you can not consult members of your team who may have a much better or different perspective than you have. So I think it's just sort of triaging what really needs my dedicated time and attention and energy. What am I uniquely suited to make a decision on, and what things can other members of my highly capable team take care of? And, so sort of spreading some of those challenges around.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. Like, do I even need to be the one making this decision? Is a great first question to ask, right?
Right. And a phrase that I adopted many years ago was, I trust your judgment. And I say that to my team a lot because I do trust their judgment. That's why they're here. I have a great team who is very smart and thinks very logically and are very good problem solvers. And I don't always need to oversee what they're doing. They're better than I am at a lot of things. So I, when it is the case, which is many times, me just saying, hey, I trust your judgment. If you need me, I'm here. I'm not trying to pass the buck or, put undue duress on you to take care of things you shouldn't be taking care of. But hey, you're highly capable. So go get it. And if you need me, then I'm here. Come, let me know.
What I observe in folks who come to me for a perspective or an opinion is sometimes a lack of perspective or not, expertise or something, but more often is just a lack of confidence that they're the best qualified person. And they want a reassurance. They don't want an opinion. They want a reassurance that, like, no, you're the best person to make this decision.
Yeah.
And they want to make sure, like, do you think you would make a better decision than me? Because I'm not feeling 100% confident. And I think when you do that, when you're like, you probably have the best judgment on this.
Right.
Then it takes a load off, because it's like it gives them permission to not be perfect.
Right.
Because you weren't going to be any better, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. There's only sometimes 90% is the best anyone's going to get, whether it's me or you or someone else.
Yeah, true. What's the biggest blunder you've ever made in a decision? Sorry, let's not make you popular for that. Don't even answer that. Unless it's a fun story you want to work into your speaking. What is the worst? I mean, bad hiring decisions are always the worst, the ones that multiply the worst, right?
For sure. I mean, in our industry especially, it's all about the people. And then when people get involved, it's not black and white, because you have people and you have emotions and you have people's families and livelihoods and motivations. So
I've always said people are a fickle product. They're not shelf stable.
Yes, they're definitely not robots.
You buy this, it ends up being that.
Right.
You can get close, though. So tell me a little bit about your professional background.
Yeah, so
We talked over coffee about it, but I don't remember all the details.
Sure. So I went to Wright State. So I was really starting college right in, the boom of the .com era. So I went to Wright State and got an undergraduate degree in MIS.
Okay.
And then I started working on base on a contract. Peerless was in its very early stages at that point. So my dad started Peerless.
Right.
And even when I was in college working on my degree, I helped him just kind of set up some of the business side of things, the accounting and contracts. And I mean, it's a tiny company. So,
so you saw it from its infancy.
Yes, the
That's
very
cool.
early days. I'm employee number 2 of Peerless. 2 is my employee number.
Interesting.
So so just help set that up. And then I finished my degree and actually went and worked on one of Peerless's early contracts doing Oracle implementations. And I decided pretty quickly that programming was not my strong suit. But I kept working on different technology, pieces of the program. And I ended up going back to Wright State and got an M.B.A. in finance.
Okay.
And I really just, liked the business side of things, really, grasped onto finance. So I did a lot of different things at Peerless. I actually early on ran a whole proposal and, from, customer relationships to building a team to writing and submitting the proposal. And we won that contract with the Air Force Office of Scientific Research. So then I managed that small program.
Okay.
And then ultimately took over really running the business side of Peerless. And again, we had like 30 people at this point, but took over running the business side and then ultimately became the CFO, where I ran the whole, business side of Peerless for about 15 years. And then about a little more over 3 years ago, my dad decided to retire and asked me to take over Peerless, which I did. So now I'm the president. So I've been with Peerless for its whole journey, and we're actually celebrating our 25th anniversary next year. So we're starting to talk about, hey, what do we do to mark this momentous occasion? And I've had the opportunity to see a lot of different sides of the business, from, working on base on a contract to, like I said, leading proposal to running a contract to doing the inside of things. And in the early days, I did a lot of, all of those support contracts, from doing contracting to obviously doing finance and accounting, a little bit of IT type of stuff, not much, but just seeing all the different sides of Peerless. I've grown a lot through that time, just as Peerless has grown. And one of the things I think that when people ask about just growing as a person, I think there's no substitute for just going through stuff. You can learn a lot from books and from school, but going through things, making those hard decisions, making the wrong decisions, having those hard conversations, it's like working out. By doing that, you get stronger and you grow. And that's what I've done for the last almost 25 years, is just gone through those things and really grown as a person and grown as a leader.
It's so interesting to think about. My head could go 1,000 different ways with that summary you just shared, but it kind of stayed in that infancy. And so it's because of the age of my children, as I'm kind of in the infancy of my business or whatever. I'm thinking about what it's like to be a young person, soon to be, whether it's an adolescent or a young adult, whatever, somewhere in that phase where you're looking at your, your father as a founder. And just how impactful was that to you as a business person and as a leader? Like, how much did you learn before you ever even touched the M.B.A.? I mean,
I will just say I've been so blessed to have the relationship that I have with my dad and to be able to work with him, because I think there's family businesses out there that, range on the spectrum from amazing to totally dysfunctional.
Right.
And we're really fortunate to be in that amazing category of where, he was a great leader. He took a lot of risk in starting Peerless and branching out from a really good job to realizing that he had a vision for doing something and starting it. And then making, the uncertainty of being in that situation, and then just be working alongside him and watching him build something. So I sort of got a 2-for-1 where I was going through things myself, but then I was also watching him as a leader, building Peerless and making his own decisions and taking risks. So it was really, I was blessed to be able to work alongside him on that. And I think at the time I probably didn't appreciate how remarkable it was to just
have that inside perspective.
To have the inside perspective and to do what he did to start something from nothing and to build it to what Peerless is today. And there's so many companies that don't make it to the 25-year point, or who don't, make it even to where we are
to
today.
5-10 million, let alone, 500 people, 100 million, whatever. Yeah.
And sometimes I stress about, obviously in our industry, it's always about, winning more contracts, growing. But sometimes I have to say, you know what, we've done a really good
job. You're really good
like,
right
let's
now.
Appreciate what we've done so far.
Right. Yeah. Well, congratulations to you on 25 years.
Thank you.
And I wouldn't undervalue the significance of your contribution, even in the early days, long before you were president. You helped make that organization what it is from its inception, right? And I know that's true because my 7-year-old will sit on my lap and ask me about the business and whatever else. And I have older kids too that are young 20s. And I had a long conversation with my oldest son, my 25-year-old. He's a electrical engineer, works for a startup now. And he just grilled me for like an hour while we were on a long drive about my business. And, and it was it was fun to have a very mature conversation with my child about the business, and him learning and being curious about what I did made me it made me accountable and communicative about things that I didn't have to. I have the luxury of just kicking it around in my head all by myself, right?
Right.
But he's making me say these things out loud, and he's learning things, and then challenging me ways my 7-year-old can't while he's sitting on my lap, right?
Sure.
But anyway, my point to all of that is when you have, a partner in the business that's somebody like, it's your family, that's a child in particular that you would do anything for, it's energizing. Right. So anyway, give yourself a little bit of credit too, because I'm sure the success of the firm has had a lot to do with you being present in those early days, not just as you kind of took bigger responsibility in the last decade or more.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And I think even in the early days, we had a good relationship of sort of the divide and conquer, where he, went out and did the sales side and the growing side, and I did the business and compliance side.
Now you do it all.
And that was really a shift. The move from being the CFO to being the president is really a change in my whole job. So when I was the CFO, because I've thought about this before, sort of how do you even quantify what that change looks like? And I think when I was a CFO, so much of my job success was dependent upon my knowledge, my expertise, or my ability to go find stuff that I didn't know, and my ability to get work done, to be organized and efficient and not drop any balls and know what needed to get done and to go do that. And pretty much I could do all of that myself or find the resources to help me do that. But being the president, my success is entirely dependent upon other people. So it's entirely dependent upon building a team around me of people who can successfully win new work, execute that work, take care of our customers, and trusting and empowering them to do that. And certainly I play a role in that. I need to make sure that I'm building good relationships with customers. I'm building good partner relationships. I'm helping identify opportunities. I do a little bit of all of that, but I can't do any of that by myself. So I have to have a really strong team around me. So it has been really a paradigm shift. And even from a leadership perspective, back when I was leading the business side and leading the finance and accounting team and contracts and HR and all of that, my leadership, what successful leadership looked like really was encouragement, support, me rolling up my sleeves and coming alongside them if we had a big audit or something,
leading
hey,
from the front, right?
Yeah, exactly. I would take part of the audit list and say, hey, I can do their jobs too. So let me take some of this and help you all do this, and we'll all get it done together. But as the president, the leadership is a little different because it's again assembling that team, which is so important, but then it's also really having that vision of where do we need to go and how do we need to get there, and what do we need to be doing and what do we need to not doing, because there's opportunity costs for us doing things that we shouldn't be doing. So the role and the ins and outs of the role are a lot different. The how am I successful in that role is a lot different, and how I'm leading those teams is a lot different.
As you were talking about kind of the paradigm shift in your leadership responsibilities, going from like kind of an operations tactician to kind of the strategic leader at the top of the organization, what occurred to me, or what I was curious about, is something I've always found challenging, which is leading leaders and being more disconnected from the producers, from the people who either write the code or do the analysis or talk to the customers or whatever it is, right? And it creates. I've seen that. I've seen small organizations struggle going through that, as the founder or the executive have to now not hire every single person and not manage every single person, but then go from that dozen people to 50 people plus or whatever. Now that was a while ago when you went through that transition, but
right.
As you lead leaders and you're far removed from the important work that gets done at the staff level, what is your best mechanism or your best approach for feeling confident that when the pen touches the paper, the work is getting done, that it's being done right? Like what's your means of measuring that?
I think that's always hard in any organization, like you said, as you get larger and you just don't have that ability to be connected to all those employees, or to be involved in all of those conversations, or to help problem solve the day-to-day challenges that come up. So one of the things that I did about a year, 18 months, it all runs together, but that I did previously is one of my really trusted, great employees. I made him our chief performance officer. And actually, I think SEIC has since named a chief performance officer.
Really?
So Peerless had that
So
title
you're leading
first.
the way.
Yes, but really what that role is it's making sure that it's from proposal to successful execution of our contracts. So it's making sure that when we are writing proposals, that we're doing a good job of articulating how we're going to successfully execute those in terms of hiring the right people, bringing the right solution, milestones. Depending on the work, it's all going to look a little different, but making sure that we're articulating that well. And then after we hopefully win that contract, and when we start executing, it's making sure that we're doing what we said we were going to do and that we're doing it well. And being in the people business, a lot of that does come back to people. It comes back to how you staff, who you staff, how you set that team up. So I've really put him in charge of just overseeing that at a high level. So that doesn't completely take care of every problem, but I think it demonstrates the commitment to, we're going to make sure that we're executing well on the work that we have and that we're taking care of our customers.
Kind of answered it. It's like the itch was right here, and I got one of these right there.
So what else? I think from a culture perspective, culture is always important and communication is important.
Yeah.
And post-COVID, I think that's become even harder. And I will say for Peerless, we're still very flexible on our remote work policy, more so, I think, than a lot of other companies are. But for me, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is, we have leadership employees across the country. So by being able to have people where our customers are in different places across the country, that does help us reach more, do more, instead of just having the whole team concentrated in Dayton. You know, we have a vice president in Huntsville, which is where we have a lot of focus. We have a director now at Fort Belvoir, which is a big Army focus for us, the Fort Belvoir, Aberdeen area.
Okay.
I have a chief growth officer who spends a lot of his time in DC. And, you know, so we're remotely working together daily,
Yeah.
but we're not sitting in person.
That forces a context of trust, right?
Absolutely.
And having to have conversations about how they come to trust their folks, right? The reason it's difficult for me to get the answer I want is because it's challenging for me. And I find it challenging. My customers find it challenging too. Whenever we're hiring senior leaders, it's always like, how do you go about creating accountabilities that really tell you? So, you know, to really kind of dumb it down or whatever, if you're doing construction and building a home, right? Like, so the foreman's standing there and you can see the framers connecting the nails to the wood, to the plan, right? You can see the work getting executed. And so much of what we do in the tech and the services space is it's not visible. One,
right?
It's remote. Two, it's a lot of judgment call at the line level, and then at the manager level, the director, VP level, right? And so there's so many layers of delusion of observation of progress, right?
Right.
That it creates a lot of. So somebody, a client of mine, wants to hire a strategy executive, strategy leader, and so we got to talking about like, well, how will you know they have done a great job? How will you know 3 months in, 3 years in, that they've done a great job, right? And it's hard. It's really hard when it comes to nuanced, obscure things or to really know. And anyway, but I like your, you know, the chief performance officer is what you call them.
Yeah,
because
chief performance officer.
That indicates to me that you appreciate the complexity of that problem, and you're really committed to having serious leadership focused on knowing that at the end of the day you're delivering.
Absolutely. And we certainly don't have all the answers. Like you said, it's an ongoing struggle.
True.
But one of the things also that I've done when we're hiring, especially in a leadership position, hiring folks, is really on paper articulating what does success look like. That way because you can have interviews and you can have conversations and say, oh, well, I really want to grow in this area, and, you know, I'm going to hire you to help us grow in the Army area. And we may both say, great, we're going to grow in the Army, but what does that really look like? You may have a completely different I may have a different perception of what growing in the Army.
X to Y,
exactly.
Or is it have more trusted relationships?
Yes,
more
is
contracts,
it having
bigger staff? One
lunch a week with someone? Exactly. There's so many different ways you could measure it. So really trying to take some of the ambiguity out of what some of those things mean and saying this is what success looks like in terms of however many ways we can slice and dice it, and make sure that we're all committed to, yeah, absolutely, that's what we're going to do. To the new hire, that's what I want to do. Because if it's not what they want to do, then this may not be the right relationship today to move forward on. But then they're coming into it eyes wide open and saying, I know what success looks like, and I feel confident that I can get there. And to me, that's the best paradigm that you can be in on the day that you're hiring someone.
That's so smart. It just occurred to me as you were talking how, you know, we always do like quarterly goals, and we'll do quarterly performance reviews. We compare them to the goals we set from last quarter, or maybe you do it annually, whatever. And company I used to run, we would do quarterly goal setting. And so we'd review our performance to our objectives, and then we would set new objectives based on new information, that kind of thing. But it's interesting how often you hire somebody into a job and you're like, come on in here and figure it out. Right. But you're not like, you don't start with, like, your organization has goals, right? And sometimes I think it's because you're lacking the expertise that person brings. And so maybe you're a little wimpy about making goals and you want their perspective on it, on goal setting. But I'm a big fan of what you just said. When somebody starts, you know the gap that you have in the organization. When you make a big hire in particular, you know that you're doing that because you don't feel confident about this, or you see this opportunity, or that you have a specific pain or objective or intent. And why do we talk about like skills and talents and whatever else, but we don't say, if you get hired into this role 6 months from now, you will be successful if X, Y, and Z.
Right.
right? That seems like you already have the content. You're doing it in your organization, right? You have goals in your organization, and somebody's probably trying to work on that, and you're maybe taking a couple of people's thing and making it one person's role, right? So yeah, I'm a big fan. I saw that a client the other day sent me a job description. I wish I could say that I was responsible for helping them produce this, but they actually wrote a brilliant job description. And it was not a high level position, not the most senior level position, but it was these are the things you'll do in this role. 3 months in, you will have accomplished this. 6 months in, you will have accomplished this. And I was like, impressive. Like you actually, this person knows what they're to do, and you know what you're expecting of them. And so everybody knows whether or not 2 months in they're on track, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I think similar to that, one of the challenges too is that a lot of times we'll start talking to someone and we'll really like them and we want to make this hire happen. So then I think it's human nature to sort of start selling them, to sell them on coming to Peerless and telling them all the great things about this job and this role. And there are great things about the job and the role in the company. Absolutely. But we can't shy away from talking about some of the challenges that you're hiring them to overcome, because that's why we're hiring people, to overcome challenges, to solve problems. And if we don't talk about that in the hiring process, then we're doing them a disservice. So let's just put it all on the table. That's why we're hiring you. And then if we come to an agreement and this person says, absolutely, I can help you with that, then we're setting ourselves up for success, hopefully. Not always, but we have a better chance of success.
Yeah, true. If it was too much fun, you couldn't get paid for it, right? Like there's something hard.
Yes,
right?
work is hard. Yeah. That's why it's called work.
Or we wouldn't be hiring an expert. We wouldn't need an expert. We wouldn't need somebody who's been there, done that, have all these strengths and built all these competencies. If it wasn't hard, we wouldn't need you.
Right. Know? We just do it ourselves.
What's the most important lesson you learned from your pop?
I've learned a lot of good lessons from him. So trying to think of a really good one is hard.
Trying to grab a zinger out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the most important lessons you want to teach your daughters about professional lives or their potential professional lives?
I love being able to raise daughters as a woman leader and them see that they can do what they want to do. And I love that my daughters, even though they're young, their career aspirations include being a chemist and being, I've got builder, chemist, NASA mission control, but these are all the things that they talk about, which I love that they see all these career opportunities for themselves. So I think, one of the things that is important to me is to just be a good model to them. So just showing them how to be a good person and a good leader. So just in general, I am a very stay on the black and white path, do things right, do things with integrity. Let's not get into the gray area. So demonstrating to them just, as a leader, as a business person, of always doing things on the up and up, because then you don't have to worry later that you're going to get in trouble for doing something wrong if you haven't done anything wrong. So just showing them how to have integrity in business, I think is really important. And then just showing them how to work hard, and also letting them see that everything isn't perfect. We always talk about work-life balance. And I love when people ask me about work-life balance, and I'm always like, there is no work-life balance. We're doing the best we can at any given moment. And if I'm doing really good, and if I'm doing work at this moment, then I'm not being a mom at this moment. And if I'm being a mom at this moment, I'm not doing work at this moment. And that's just how life is. So you just have to recognize that it is messy and it is a balancing act, and we just do the best that we can every minute, but you're not going to be perfect. And sometimes balls are going to drop, or you're going to be taking phone calls from the basketball sidelines, or I missed my kids' donuts with mom because I was in DC on a work trip and I did everything I could to make
That
it
hurts, but it's
I know,
life. Yeah.
but I had a friend's mom take them, and they probably had a better time than if I was there. And I got the guilt trip from that. But I think them just seeing the world is not perfect. We are not perfect, and we just have to make the best decisions that we can and do the best that we can at every given moment.
It's still okay. You know what my wife asked me the other day? I think it was my wife. I was talking to my wife. I don't know if there was somebody else there that asked me, but about what I wanted to be when I was a kid. And you know those like 80s, 90s movies where the dad's got his 3-piece suit on, walking to the baseball game, the kid's baseball game, and he's got his antenna shoe phone or whatever, his big oversized cell phone. He's haggling with somebody over a deal. So, I don't have time for this. And then he leaves the game. And it's like the whole story is he's too busy for his family or whatever, right? That's what I wanted to be when I grow up. I told my wife this, like I wanted to be that like overly busy negotiating some super important deal, dressed to the night, you know, like hard charging, big impact businessman. That was I wanted to wear a suit, you know what I mean? Whatever those guys wearing suits do, that's what I wanted to be when I grew up, you know? But it's funny how that image was always painted as kind of like the villain, or the villain that needed to be converted or whatever throughout the story. And I was just like, yeah, that's what I want. Cause I wanted that, you know, whatever, wealth, power, whatever. As a kid, we were a little bit broke. And, you know, now that I'm a businessman or whatever, I just want to chill a little bit, you know, hang out with my family and stuff. Not be lazy, but you know, it's taken a different form. Right. And it's funny though, like at the time I didn't suffer any kind of like, oh, nobody's there for me, they're too busy. So the villain in that narrative I didn't even see it. Right.
Right.
I just wanted that really nice car and stuff. That's what was missing for me. Right.
Yeah.
But everybody, all that just to say, that's a long setup for this single comment, but all that just to say that everybody, I think, kind of wants something that fills some kind of gap or whatever. And it's okay. And however you go about getting that, you create others. Right. You create other insufficiencies and imperfections and whatever along the way. And I love what you said about you missed this, you overdo that, whatever. It's all okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. Yeah. So thank you for that. That's a little bit of okay. Yeah, it doesn't always have to be perfect. You know, you don't have to be the most successful at this and this and this and this and all this. And yeah, I think I probably watch too much Instagram.
Absolutely. And I think that people have this vision that, you know, you if you just are really organized and really good, you can have it all. You can have, you know, a great career and healthy, clean kids who are at all of their sporting events on time, and a wonderful marriage, and
grow all your own food.
Exactly. Yes. And I think that you can have a lot of that, and hopefully you can have everything that you want, but you have to realize some of it's not all going to be perfect. Some of it's going to be subpar, and kids are going to be late to practice, and someone's going to miss a homework assignment, and you're going to miss a call one time because you didn't hear your phone ringing, and it just happens, and you just do the very best you can, and hopefully those things don't happen that often, but it's going to happen.
Thanks for the detour down family lane or whatever.
Yeah.
I always find that intriguing too, for somebody with a lot of responsibility, and not just how you balance it, but your philosophy and attitude toward it. And it's there is no, I think your answer is clear, and it gives me a little comfort that there's no perfect recipe.
Right. There's not this perfect balance either. Just you do the best you can.
You've spent most of your career with Peerless.
Yeah.
And you got another, 20, 30 years in you to do this? Or what's your vision for what Peerless is going to be next, and what you're going to be doing 10, 20 years from now?
I have a big vision for Peerless to keep going and to grow. And I think the Peerless of the next 25 years is going to look a lot different than the Peerless of the first 25 years. And that's things are changing in the world, in our industry. Certainly post COVID, the world looks a lot different. But even from a defense industry perspective, I think that the defense industry, the Air Force in particular, but all of defense is changing more now than it's changed anytime that I've seen in the last 25 years. I think we're preparing to fight war or wars that are going to look a lot different than previous battles. There's AI now, which is probably going to be a game changer in the way we do things. Our government is being, pushed to get tools and technologies into the hands of warfighters way faster than we've ever done before. So there's just so many things changing in this environment. And as companies who support that, we have to change as well to make sure that we are, best suited to meet our customers' missions and that we are adapting to these changing environments. So for Peerless, we stood up our Peerless Innovation Center last year, really with a strong focus on making sure that we are investing in the people, tools, and technologies, capabilities to bring what our customers need. So looking at, digital engineering, we're looking a lot at electronic warfare, which is a huge part of the way, our government is, we're defending our nation today. So just changing the way we do business as a company to make sure that we're prepared for that. So the company will look a little bit different. We're still keeping the strong foundation of, support, engineering, taking good care of our customers, but just doing things a little different to make sure that we have those strong capabilities in the technology field that our customers need.
What if the next 25 years are much more peaceful?
I hope that they are more peaceful.
Does it seem like a long shot?
I don't think that's likely given the state of the world today. But I
would
hope...
certainly be irresponsible to just assume and not prepare, right?
Yes, exactly. And I think that even in times of peace, we have to, what was Reagan, peace through strength? We have to continue as a country to make sure that from a technology perspective, that we are staying ahead of our adversaries. And it's not just, bombs and guns. It's protecting, so much of it now is protecting our information, protecting our access to data. As we become more and more reliant on technology for communication, for banking, for energy, we have to make sure that we're protecting those as well. So I think it's either offense or defense, but either way, we have to make sure that we're staying ahead of our adversaries.
Yeah, peace happens for a reason, I guess. It's not just a happenstance, right?
Yeah.
And it probably comes with some sense of security
for
all of those critical systems and processes and industries or whatever that we rely on to live our lives, right?
Right. Well, even the Air Force, they talk about, and as part of the Air Force reorg right now, they're talking about information superiority, and they're talking about, we talk about air dominance. But for nuclear, they're very careful. They say, we don't want to be nuclear superior. We want to be, a strong nuclear deterrent. So the nuclear mission is all about deterrence.
Right. Just make sure everybody knows that that's the end.
Yes. But we don't ever want to have to use
Just make sure we all know that the assured destruction is mutual.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, agreed. And that, and maybe the fact that there are so many players in the world that are capable of destroying the world, right, or provoking destruction of the world, it lends a little bit to. I mean, that's evidence, I guess. The strength lends to peace, right? And we're all conducting warfare in different ways now. Sneakier, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
A lot of punches in the back of the head, if you will, which is kind of ugly. It's not a gentleman's battlefield anymore, right? But that's the battle. I mean, we're a long way from standing in a row and firing at each other, right?
Yes.
Not wearing matching uniforms anymore, even, right? Like,
right.
Even that's just a small fraction of the war. That's interesting. Yeah. Can you tell I don't think a lot about war? I do have some customers in the defense world, but I'm a little removed from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our community, though. That's our neighborhood.
Right. Yeah.
I'm grateful you do what you do.
Well, I mean, the Air Force's whole reorg is called the Great Power Competition. So
why the name? I'm not familiar with the naming.
So it's really just all about making sure we're positioned to to be stronger than our adversaries. I think if you hear just in public briefings, the Department of Defense speaking, that China has advanced significantly in the last many years, and we've got Russia. There's just a lot of publicly known enemies out there that are making significant advancements in their combat readiness, and we have to do things differently as a country to make sure that we are prepared to hopefully proactively deter anything from happening, but should something happen, to be ready to respond to that. So the government is doing a good job of proactively saying we need to do business differently to make sure that we're ready if something unfortunate would happen. So they're really, like I said, the Air Force is reorganizing from the top down to be more efficient, to make sure that their weapon systems can communicate effectively with each other, to make sure that they are organized in such a way that puts us in the very best position possible.
Are you familiar yet with any implications that's going to have on Wright Pat Air Force Base?
No, and I at the high level, they're just that none of that is really being discussed at this point. But I think Wright Pat is a strong base. I think we have a great community here and have really positioned the base strongly for success. So I think we all believe and hope that will continue in the future.
There's a pretty great business infrastructure supporting that base here locally. And I think a good case for keeping as many assets and organizations here as possible, but
absolutely. And they're saying that there's not going to be any sort of BRAC, which is the base realignment and closing. And if you look at Wright Pat, just historically, years ago, we were at 20,000 people at Wright Pat. They're now publicly saying that we're at 35. So that's almost a doubling in the force that we have here, which I think is a testament to the really important missions that we have here at Wright Pat.
Dayton's kind of turning into a little tech town here. I mean, I guess it always kind of has been in a way. It's always been an innovation hub here, but it's really kind of maturing, I guess, as a high tech town these days.
Absolutely.
Which I like. I've always, I'm kind of a fanboy, all this tech stuff, from Star Trek to the Wright Pat Air Force Base, right? What's going to be your biggest challenge over the next decade? Decade's a long time. Yeah. Over the next foreseeable kind of chunk of your future.
Sure. I think there's no shortage of challenges.
Right. But true.
I think for us, one of the things that Peerless specific is we're really transitioning from being just a traditional services provider to being more of a solutions provider. So we have gotten to where we are today largely by hiring really great people to go support our customers. And those really great people are doing strong technology things. They're doing systems engineering. They're doing cybersecurity. They're doing enterprise IT. They're doing modeling and simulation. So they're doing a lot of neat technical things, but they're doing it sort of at the government's request for the government. And what we're doing now is we are building tools and solutions in-house to bring to our government customers. So we're doing a internal research and development project right now to build a whole testing environment for open architecture electronic warfare applications. So that's something that we are building at Peerless, that we have customer interest from several different organizations, but we have to, the government's not designing that. We are designing that. And then we are building the whole technology infrastructure to do that. And the technology infrastructure to do something like that looks a lot different than the technology infrastructure for a bunch of people who are just basically working on, government computers and they just need a Peerless email account.
Right. Yeah.
So just making that switch as a company is a challenge, and we're tackling it right now. We've got we've made great strides. We have a lot of really exciting things going on in that area, but it's been a little bit of a challenge just changing the paradigm of how we do business. And I'm sure there's many additional speed bumps ahead that we probably haven't even identified yet.
Yeah, you're lucky when you find the problems, because there's a big bag of them that are unknown, right? I always think about that. I forget how the saying goes exactly, but you the things you think will take 10 years end up taking 2, and the things you think will take 2 months end up taking 2 years, right? So,
Yep, absolutely.
nothing ever seems to mature or progress at the pace you kind of initially imagine it, right?
Right.
But you guess, right? And you have to be
Yeah.
okay with saying, this is my 2-year vision. It takes 5 years. Okay, fine.
Right.
If you get there, you're winning, right? If it's my 10-year plan, and you find a shortcut, great, right? So you're winning.
And every month along the way, we're in a better position than we were if we hadn't gone down this path.
Perfection's the enemy of progress, right? So if you get too uptight about it, you won't keep going. So as you guys evolve into kind of commercializing product or solutions, there's a lot of things to figure out there. I'm not even sure where to start or what my question is here, but I guess my question is, is that a 2-year process? Is that a 10-year process? Building a product or building something that you can kind of own and then sell that, as opposed to selling man hours or services?
Sure.
Like what's that process like?
Well, I think it's iterative because I think we are already at a place where we've built some things that we are bringing to the government.
Okay.
So we've already sort of hit some initial milestones of doing significantly stronger technology projects than we were doing 2 years ago.
Okay, cool.
So we've already started that. And I think maybe we never really finish it because you're always continuing to evolve. And even the products that we're developing, and they're not really products, it's more of a solution, but the solution that we're developing that I mentioned on the EW side, we're going to come up with an initial capability, but then ideally we have customers that like that, or they want to see different things, or they want to expand the capability or the applicability. So then we just keep building onto it, but we do it in conjunction with our customers of understanding what they need, what they're looking for, and then just continue to invest in making it better.
Kind of thinking about the commercial world now, thinking about SaaS, and in the software space, it's funny to me how long software existed in the industry it still does. That's what I'm talking about, like its history as a deployed product. It's like, okay, well, you get to now download this on your machines and you own it. Good luck. It's always been funny to me that was kind of like the default original way that software was built and delivered, and it still is in so many places. But the whole software as a service thing seems to be so natural because the nature of it's constantly evolving. So pushing patches, adding features, all that kind of stuff it's soft. Like it's in the name. Like it's not something you can't get back and you can't go, like you can literally just push it around, right?
Right.
And so it's like a piece of artwork or whatever that the painter can always reach the canvas, right?
Yeah.
And so why would it ever be some thing in a box that's pushed and never touched again, as opposed to like you said, an iterative, ever kind of growing product, right? Software as a service. All that just to say, I think it's not that different. I mean, you're doing services now. It's mostly tech stuff, but services you're doing are building product. It's a matter. I guess the difference is who owns it, right? But it's really not that big of a stretch to go from services to a product company, because the product that you're building is an ongoing, growing, evolving, kind of living, not quite living, but kind of a living product, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, because that's one of the things that I always try to stress to our team is as we've launched the Peerless Innovation Center and as we're doing things a little bit differently, it's not wildly different than what we were already doing, because the last thing I want is for the strong foundation of a team that we've built for 25 years to think, oh, well, Peerless is changing now and I don't have a place there. Absolutely not.
It's still the same thing. That's your bread and butter, right?
And we're still doing very similar things that we were doing before. We're just advancing it and doing it, going a little deeper and going a little farther and having, more technology that we can own and build and take to even more customers. But it's still, the foundation is still there, and the employees that helped us get to where we are today still are critically important in the future of Peerless as well.
You mentioned the infrastructure, like setting up infrastructure to build product or solutions rather is different.
And even the way the way that the contracts are to deliver those types of solutions are structured a little different. You work with your customers a little different. So it's just a little bit different of a way of doing business that we have to adapt to.
And I guess that challenge is probably not that different than your challenge as a student or new employee or whatever when you started the firm. You're like, how are we going to send invoices?
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
It's not rocket science stuff. It's process stuff. It's I need a tool stuff, right?
It's
the rocket science is the solution or whatever, right? Yes. But the operational changes or whatever are not that complex, right?
No, it's certainly solvable. It's just a different mindset of I can't do today the exact same thing that I did yesterday and be successful. I have to do things a little bit differently. And as humans, change can be a challenge because sometimes we just like to do the exact same thing every day.
Yeah. Do you have an affinity for the familiar? I find that people describe humans in generalities that are actually apply to them. I actually can't stand doing the same thing all the time. I can't stand
I really don't mind. And I think that's why I was so good at finance, because I like having predictable results.
Right. These numbers are they're reliable, right?
Right, exactly.
When I was in college, Andrea, I would intentionally come in early on the second day of class so I could sit in a different seat. I didn't want that classroom to fill up with everybody sitting in the same seat they sat in on the first day. And I would just count how many people that disrupted. And it was really satisfying to me to know that like 12 people had to sit in a different seat because I sat in a different seat.
The domino effect. I am a sit in the same seat type of person.
You probably hated me in college. Sorry we did that to you. But yeah, just because I like the change. Well, all right, last question, maybe one or two. When you think about you personally in your career, right? We talked a little bit about work, life, whatever. It's all the same thing. Work is life, and life is work, right? So when you think about you personally, your career, and what happens to Peerless will have a huge impact on that, right? So there's not a ladder to climb there. There's you're off into space and it's this rocket ship and where are you going to go or whatever, right? It's a different path now to what's going to be next for you in your career 5 years from now, right? So speak to that a little bit. What are you most excited about in your career? It's not a promotion, new title thing, right? Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't want to take anything from you, but what's your 5-year career plan? Like, what do you want to be doing in 5 years, and how is that different than what you're doing now? 10 years, whatever it is.
It's all about Peerless, like you said, and all about building a company that continues to be successful in the environment that we're in today, which is, some of the things that I talked about of adapting technology, of doing things differently. And for us, it's building that foundation of, we're not going to be the same company we were 5, 10, 15 years ago. We're going to be a different company. So I'm excited to position Peerless as the company of tomorrow, where we are doing more research and development type projects, where we can continue to cite all of the cool things that we're doing for our customers, and just adding to those. So when I talk about Peerless today, I'll say things. I've worked to kind of come up with some interesting things that Peerless is doing, just to quantify them, because sometimes it's so easy to go into this 10-minute technical dissertation of what you're doing, but then to get to that very pinnacle of this is really what we're doing. So sometimes when I talk about Peerless, when someone just at a cocktail party says, well, what does Peerless do? I'm like, well, we're the support contractor for the F-22, so we are approving all modernizations to that weapon system. We are doing all of the cybersecurity for the Air Force's DCGS, which is its intelligence weapon system.
Okay.
Our engineers are making sure that in the hopefully unlikely event that we have to drop a nuclear bomb, that those pilots get home safely.
Wow.
So we are, training forces who protect missile silos. So just things like that. So those are some of the things we're doing today. And I just look forward to having, 5, 10 more of those. And there's more today, obviously, but just continuing to add to these are the meaningful ways that Peerless is making a difference to our country, to our nation's defense.
That's exciting. Yeah. Well, best of luck to you as you kind of, I don't know if this is an appropriate categorization, but kind of evolve, not big step, but evolve from operator to innovator, right?
Yeah,
As you
absolutely.
guys are going from kind of executing X's and O's to really shaking things up and making some new things. And obviously from that kind of resume that you just shared, you guys are already doing some really cool things.
We are.
A couple
We
of those things
are.
were a surprise. So anyway, well done. Really
Yeah.
good work at Peerless. And I hope the next 25, again, you guys are all raising a glass to celebrate your 25 years, that the rest of your organization is as inspired as you are about how much cooler even still it could be 25 years from now. I hope I'm still around. Maybe we'll do another podcast then.
Sounds good. We'll put on the calendar.
All right, cool. Thank you, Andrea. I appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks, Aaron.
All right.